Hello, everyone. Welcome to our third session from the Mini Bootcamp HTML CSS. And we can start if anybody have a question from the previous two sessions. Okay. So in the last section, let me actually share my screen. We stopped by the CSS font. We covered most of the CSS properties that we're going to be need in our project. In the beginning of today's session, we're going to focus on the CSS font properties. And then we're going to cover a couple of other properties that we're probably going to need in the project. I'm going to go over like floating elements and how we can do layouts. And finally, we're going to do like a small practice by the end of today's session to just put everything together, learn about margin, padding. And in the next section, which tomorrow, we're going to work in a portfolio project that we can do together. So for CSS fonts, you want to make your website look better fonts. We're going to talk about font families. What is a font family property? How you have font style and font size, font weight, and font variant as well. These are all CSS properties that you can use them to change the text that you have in your web page. We're going to talk about font families in general in the beginning. There are main two types of font families. Okay, you can either have a generic family. Generic, that means a group of font families they have similar looks. Like you have the serif. In serif here, you will have more details, as you can see. So the name of the font Times New Roman, that's the name of the font, but it belongs to this generic name, which is serif. Sans serif, that's mean it don't have the serif in the font, which is much easier to use in the web or to read in the web. So that type, if they don't have all this extras for the letter, they call it sans serif. And as an example of the sans serif font, it will be the Arial font. And it's very popular to use the Arial font because it's already in every computer and every operating system they have the Arial font. You also have the monospace. In monospace, they spacing each letter with the same width. That's the reason they call it monospace. Here, notice the L taking less width than the A. The A is having more width. But in that case, the monospace, they will place each letter having the same width. You have the cursive, like for example, you have the Comic Sans, and it's trying to mimic handwriting. That's what is cursive fonts. So it will look like it's handwriting fonts. Also, you have fantasy category, which an example of it's going to be Aladdin that will have some styling to it. Okay, that you can use them like in the slides or anything. So these are the main 5 genetic families. Okay, serif could have multiple font types belong to that category. I think in order to remove them. Oops. There we go. So we're going to start with the font styling. It's very important that in CSS in general, either margin or padding or any unit that can take a size could either have a pixel, EMs, rems. Rems is more powerful than EMs. And also you have the view width or a percentage. Okay. So let's talk about widths in general or lenses in CSS. It's very important to understand that concept about lenses, how the lens in CSS work. Let's practice something here and go over lenses, because in our project, we're going to be using percentage CSS2. Let me open it with Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to call lenses dot HTML. And I can create a boilerplate. CSS lenses. And I will have a box, which I'm going to call a div. Let's say box 1. And I will give it an ID of box 1. Now, I will add the styling here. So I'm going to be using internal styling, style. I will target the box 1 or select box 1. And I'm going to use a couple of properties that you should be familiar with right now, like the background color. And let's use a background color of, let's have a light color, like coral. Or actually, I like the other one, the cornflower blue. Okay. So this is the background color. I'll add a border, 1 pixel, solid. And let's do black, because why not? And let's render that and see how it looks like. Here we go. It will take the full width. Notice that the browser automatically have this spacing. I want to remove that to reset the browser. So I can set the padding 0, border, or margin to 0. And once you add that, notice automatically you're not going to have this default spacing that you have in your browser. And we're using the universal selector to select all the elements. Good. Now, since div is considered to be a block level element, it will take the full width. But you can limit its width. I also want to position it a little bit down. I want to control the position, push the box bottom in a little bit to the left. Anybody know what is the CSS property to push the box down and a little bit to the right from the properties that we learned about the previous class? You can use margin, right? Because margin, you're adding space outside the box. So I can add margin, and I can do margin top. I can add 50 pixel. So it's going to push the box bottom to 50 pixel. And I have margin to the left. Let's do 50 pixel. Good. I will do text align to the center. So the box is going to be in the center. Good. And actually, let's center it. So I'm going to do margin. I'm going to do margin top and bottom 50 and left and right auto. There we go. So notice that auto is not going to take an effect because you never give a width to this box. And that's what I want to go over. So far, I'm using pixels here. So the width, I also can use pixels. But pixels is called an absolute lens. So there's 2 categories of lenses, either absolute or relative. Your screen is composed of pixels, and it depends on what is the device you're using. If you're using a mobile phone, you have less amount of pixels. If you have a bigger phone, to have more, or have a computer screen, to have bigger amount of pixels. So I can set the width, let's say 450 pixels. Here you go. And I can do that to just remove the margin here. So it will center it. But the problem, if you resize the screen, it will always be 450 pixel. It's an absolute, regardless of what is the mobile device using. So for example, I can check that with a mobile device. If you go to the developer tool and you have this icon right here, that will view your application in mobile device. And here, this mobile device this is a dimension responsive, but you can select any mobile device that you want. For example, Galaxy Note 3, Galaxy S8. If you're on iPhone guy, you have the iPhone 12 Pro, and you can get more devices because you will have the number of pixels that come with that device. So let's test this with iPhone 12 Pro Max. Here you go. Notice it's not in the center anymore. The reason is because the width of that phone is 390 pixels. And we're already giving a width of 450 pixels, right? So it's a fixed number, will not gonna change. It's that amount of pixels. That's the reason they call it absolute. However, if it's in a bigger screen, 450, and it's in the center, regardless if you make it like the smallest, it will still 450 pixel. So this is an absolute value. And it's not recommended to use them for multiple reasons. One of it is accessibility. And I'm going to show that in a little bit, especially when you're dealing with the font. For example, here, if I'm doing the font size, and I'm going to do it 16 pixel. So I'm setting the font size to an absolute value to be always 16 pixel. If you save that, this is 16 pixel, and you can check that. If you inspect, you will see that the box I have font size 16 pixel, and you can go to the computed, you'll find here that the font size 16 pixel. It will always be 16 pixel, regardless of the device's small screen, it will also be 16 pixel. Not only that, as I mentioned for accessibility, so for example, if you go for your browser settings, people with disabilities, the default of your browser, this is the browser default, not the browser default appearance, that the font size is going to be medium. That's the normal behavior of any web browser. But with users with disability, they want to make it very large, for example. Okay. So because they want to see bigger font to be able to see the words that are on the screen. So if I select it very large and I get back, it is very large, but it's still 16 pixel because it's a specific size. However, it's not the same if you're using an absolute value, okay? So this is one of the disadvantage. I'm gonna make it back medium, that the font will not gonna be change if you change the font size of your screen. Okay, medium, just wanna make sure it's medium, good. So how we can make it better, and instead of using pixels, I'm not saying that using pixels is a bad thing. You can use pixels in certain situations, but you need to understand that it will base on the amount of pixels the device have, and it will not accommodate any screen resizing. Okay, what is the alternatives? Well, you can use relative values lenses. And beside pixels, there's more than pixels. You can use any unit that you're familiar with, like centimeter. You can use inches because this is a measurement lens, right? And CSS will understand it. For example, if I say the width is going to be 450 centimeter, that's going to be huge. I know that the ruler is 20 centimeters, so you'll see like a scroll bar here. But this is exactly will be 450 centimeter. You can do it 45 inch. If you save that, still big, I can do only 4-inch. Here you go. So you can put any absolute value that have a specific measurement. It's not relative to anything, inches, centimeters, millimeters. You can use points, and you can convert them. And it's easy to convert them. Like here, I'm using in inches, right? I'm saying 4 inches. And if you try to inspect, the computed value will always come to pixels. So if I do the width here, that 4 inches is 384 pixels. Okay, good. I'm gonna get it back to 450 pixels. But now I want to do relative passes because they're better. I'm just gonna add here widths because they're gonna keep overriding each other. Widths, so you know that you can use 4 inches. You can use widths 4 centimeters. You can use 40 millimeter. These are all absolute values, but the 450 pixel will override all of them. This is just a reference. Now let's talk about relative lenses. You can use percentage. So if I say the width to be 50%, now the question is 50% of what? But let's save it. It's 50% of the parent element, which is the body. So the body is the whole width of the screen. So when I do 50%, notice that it will, as the screen getting bigger, the width's getting bigger because it's a percentage of the screen. Okay. And it's more relative now to the screen size, right? And it will always make sure that the width of this box will be half of the screen. Even if you go in a mobile device, so now I'm in a mobile device, I'm in the iPhone, the width here is going to be always half of the mobile device screen width. If I change the device, it will be always half of the mobile device. And you can put any percentage. I can put 25, 75, any percentage that you want. That's one of the relative passes. The next relative pass is called rems. So I can do width is equal 5 rem. What does 5 rem means? That's the question now. Well, 5 of the root measurement. The root measurement in that case is the length of the text inside the body. And the default of the root length is 16. So it's 5 times 16 pixels. Now you can say, okay, so it's going to get 2 pixels anyway, right? So what is the idea of REMS? The idea of REMS is that it's dynamic based on the screen type. If the font change, for example, if the font changed to medium, it will automatically, the 16 of the root will change. So the default of, let's actually do this here. Let's before do REMS here. So if you go here, you will notice that the computer value for the text font size is 16 because I set it to 16 pixels here. Let me comment this here. And now try to go to settings. Go to the appearance. Now very large. And now the text is large. Let's see how many pixels when I selected the screen to be large. And I can go to compute it. Notice that the font size now in large screen, 24 pixels. Why? Because now the root size of all the text change to be 24. So when you change the size of the screen, the root size of the whole page will change. The medium is 16. When I change the screen now, any user with disability, he will find the font bigger. And if he make it, for example, very small, now it's going to be very small. If you make it large, it's going to be large. And you can inspect what is the value for it.
and it's going to be 20, 16, 20, 24. Good. So let's keep adding four pixels based on this in the view size. So I can set, let me comment this, the font size to be 1 rem. 1 rem, that's mean it's in a, when it's the font small screen, or not small screen, font, or the browser font small, it's going to be medium 16 pixel. If it's large, it's going to be 20 pixels. So it's going to be dynamically changing based on the browser settings. Okay. And here also the width, I can calculate it as rem width, let's say 4 rem, and 4 rem in that case. If it's in the medium screen, it's going to be 4 times 16 pixels. We multiply that. Let me do it in calculator. 4 times 16, 64 pixels. If you're in large, that make the font large, it's going to be 24 pixels times 4. Okay, it's not based on the parent. This can be deeply nested in other element. However, it's have to do with the root size. So now 4 rem is going to be 64 pixels, and you can double check that the width now 80. 80 because I have the size large. So if I get it back to medium, it should be 64 pixels. Beautiful. So your application will adapt to the browser settings, and especially if a user with disability, he want to change the settings based on the browser. That's why REMs are very popular. EMs, on the other hand, they're not the best, can cause a lot of confusion. What I'm missing here. Yep, I didn't close that. But again, I'm just not going to go over the EMs. You're rarely going to find me using them. And I don't recommend anybody using them because it depends on the parent. So if this div is inside another div and inside another div, and you change the font size here. So it's multiplier of the font size here, then multiplier of the font size here. And you can't predict what is going to be the lenses because it's relative to the parent. But rems is relative to the root element. That's why root element measurement. Okay, what else we have? We have this div. I want to make the widths to be the full widths. You can use 100%, just placing 100%. That will work, not a big deal. What if I wanted to be taking the full height? I can do height 100%. But notice that the height never took the whole screen. The question is why? 100% of what? That's the question that you want to ask yourself. Of the parent. That's the element of the parent. What is the height of body? The height of body is based on the content, and I only have this content here. That's it. So if you go right here and inspect, and this is the body, and if you hover over it, it will give you the height of it. You see, it will highlight it here that this is only the body. It's not taking the full screen. So you have to make the body take the full screen. Okay, in order 100%, it's going to be 100% of the full screen. There's another approach where you can say that I want 100% of the view height. The view height is the viewport or your screen height. Okay. So if I save that, now it's looking, you'll find that the box taken 100% of the screen height. And you will have a scroller
because I added some spaces in the top and spaces in the bottom. But it takes the full height of my page. Also, you can use, alternatively from view height, you can use view width. And regardless of what is the device you're in, and also regardless of what is the size of your browser, if you minimize it here, you will always have this, because keep in mind we're adding border. So you will have like 2 pixels of border. If I remove the border, what else I have beside the border? Oh, I see. You can use the box sizing, border box. And it's have the content itself. But that's give you the idea that you can use relative. And in that case, these 2 values are relative to your screen, not relative to another element or the root element, not relative to the parent, because percentage is relative to the parent. Okay, these are the most popular relative lenses. There is more, of course, and I know that recently CSS added more relative lenses that you probably want to check them out. They just added them by the end of last year, like view height content, view height max contents, and stuff like that. Since we're talking about lenses, we can cover something else. Like, can comment this whole box. We can use maximum widths. So I can set a maximum width that this element cannot go beyond. And the maximum width, let's say 500 pixels. Notice, regardless, or actually maximum width, you can get 500 pixel, or let's make it 900 pixel. So this is 900. This is more relative and more responsive as well. How is that possible? Well, notice it will be always 500, 900 pixel. If you resize the page, it will stay 900 pixel. But if you try to make it smaller, it will, that's the max it can get. It can get smaller than this. You see that? And it will, as you make it bigger, the spaces here will adapt to that change. Okay. You can use also minimum widths, and I can set it to be 500 pixels, because I'm missing a pixels. So it can get bigger, but it cannot, the minimum it can get. So because I'm putting here the widths to be 100, I can set a width to be 800 pixels. So it's 800 pixel, and the minimum it can get is the 500. Notice that if you try to go underneath 500, it will start getting the scroll bar here. So you can use minimum and maximum widths. Also the alternative, not alternative, similarly, you can use minimum and maximum heights. Okay. Any question about absolute lenses? This is lenses. And you can use them with margin, anything that you use lens with, like margin, padding, borders. You can do, for example, cool effect, like let's say then I have my box one here. I have the font size. It's going to be 1%. of the view width. So it's going to be 1% of the view width, which is the screen side. So now it should be small. You make the screen smaller, or actually let's make it 5%. So box 1, as you increase the width, notice that the font's getting bigger because it's relative to the width of the screen. It's getting bigger. The screen getting smaller, it's getting smaller. It's 5% of the screen width. You can do it to the screen height. So you're making the height smaller, the size of the text getting smaller. Okay. So the font sizes set the size of the text. You can set the font size with pixels, and pixels in that case is going to be an absolute length. It's a fixed value. EMs that mean to the size of the parent or to the font size of the parent compared to the font size of the parent. Rems compared to the size of the root element. And using rems, it has some advantage that it will adapt to the screen, to the browser settings. Also, you have view widths and percentage. So I highly recommend that using rems, percentage. Of course, if you height to take the, in case if you want to make it full width of the screen or full height, and rarely using pixels, but I don't recommend EMs. One EM and one rem is equal to the current font size. The default text size in the browser is 16, in case you're viewing in a medium font size of the browser. So the default size of one EM, one rem is going to be 16 pixel. The view width units means the viewport width. The text size will be changed according to the size of the window. Make it smaller, make it bigger. One view width is equal to 1%. This is a percentage of the viewport width. The font sizes sets the size of the text. Very simple. You can use percentage. So in that case scenario here, text 1 is going to be 50% of the parent font size. Okay. 24 pixels. Here, 24 pixels. And 1 EM. 1 EM, that means 16 pixels, assuming that the parent is the body. 50%, it's going to be 50% of the 16 pixels. So that's going to be 8 pixels in that case. Okay. Font size, notice that you can have some predefined named font like XX small, X small, small, medium, large, extra large, and XX large. Let's test one of them. Extra large. And if you inspect the extra large font, notice that I set it to extra large. The computed value for the font size is going to be 24. You can set it to large, you can set it to extra small, and any value. These are named and predefined values for you that you can use out of the box. Font style. Font style is used to set the font style italic or opaque. Italic or opaque, they're pretty much the same visually. You see, this is the italic, this is the opaque. You can't tell the difference. But this is the normal text. Remember when we covered the italic tag and italic text and EM text, and we used emphasize text, the EM tag. And if you try to render them, let's add them inside a paragraph because
The italic tag is inline. That means it's going to put it right next to each other. Paragraph. Now we're going to put the EMs here. Remember when we covered that in the very first session? Notice that both of them are italic text. The only difference here, and I told you that don't use these tags because you can always use CSS to make any text italic. You can, that's the job for the CSS. However, you only probably want to use the emphasize, especially for users with disabilities that using screen readers, because it will sound this text differently in the screen reader application. Okay, so I don't need tags for that. I can do it with the CSS. So I can do here, paragraph, para 1, normal text, para 2, italic text, and finally paragraph 3, where I'm going to use the oblique, I don't know how to spell that. Text. Okay, so I can select the first ID, para 1, do the font style to be normal, which is the default. Can copy this down by using Shift, Alt, and arrow down 2 more times. And for the paragraph 2, I'm going to make it, you can press Control Space, give you the option, italic, Control Space. Now we're going to use the oblique. And notice that this is the 3. Notice that the italic and oblique, they are pretty much the same thing, right? Visually. But they are the 2 types beside the normal value. Font weight. This is the weight of the font to be bold or bolder font and so on. You can use lighter. That's going to be lighter version of the font. Make it light font or bold font. You can put a numeric value, and the numeric value from 100 all the way to 900. 100 is the lightest font. 100. 900 is the boldest font. And you can keep increase them by 100. So 100, 200, 300, 400, and so on. So let's make this one here, font weight. I'm going to use the numeric one, lighter, or the predefined name lighter. Second one here, font weight. And notice that the Visual Studio Code will give you all the options like 100, 200, 300. I'm going to do it bold. Next is font weight. And I'm going to use 400 is the normal. Let's use 900. So it's still bold. 700. 700 is still a little bit bold, but this is the normal text. So you can set how you want the text to appear. Do you want it bold? Do you want an italic text? You can control the appearance of the text through CSS properties, the font style and font weight. Font variant. Actually, we didn't go over an example of the font family. So let's do font family. And automatically, the Visual Studio Code will list all the tags because you write them in tags. And the convention is that if you have 2 words, you have to wrap them with a single quote. So initially, I wanted the Courier New, which is a font that belongs to the monospace family. If the user don't have that font, I will view it in a Courier font. Let's font family, change the font here.
And you can put the generic family here. Sorry, like the cursive or fancy. I will use the Arial because it's very popular sans serif font. If the Arial is not in the system, which I doubt it, all the systems have the Arial font. They will use Helvetica as the second or the fallback. And finally, it will fall back in any font that the user might have installed in his system that have sans serif. I will use font family here for the time. I want to use a serif one. Time New Romans. I will start with Georgia, then Time New Romans times in serif. So if I save that, you will notice that they have 3 different fonts or font styles in that case. Okay. Cover font weight. Font variant. I rarely use this property. The font variant defines a text to be displayed in a small cap font. So it will capitalize them, all lower letters unconverted to an uppercase, but smaller size font. The only first letter here will be capital. Welcome to Clarusway. All the lowercase letters are converted to uppercase letters, but in a smaller size. So only the lowercase will convert it to an uppercase, but they have smaller size. This is the small caps. Okay. So let's take example, paragraph, ID caps, this text in small caps. And I'll use font variant. And this is technically either normal or small caps. And if you take a look at it, notice the T here is capital, so it will be bigger in size compared to other letters. HIS, they are lowercase, so they will be uppercase, but less in size. T is uppercase, so it will be bigger in size. EXT will be smaller in size. The rest are in lowercase, they will always be in a lower or less size compared to the uppercases, but they all get to be uppercase anyway. So that's how it get converted to small caps. Not sure what might be the application for that, but I never use them. But the property is there. Probably if you want to write like a code that have keyboards keys, that's probably like, for example, type in arrow key. So it will look like keyboard or enter. Before we finish this section, I want to show you how you can get, sometimes you want to get some fonts from online. And the best location, there's multiple libraries for fonts, but the most popular font library is Google Fonts. So you can search Google Fonts. And it will take you to the Google Fonts. And they have a huge library that have multiple fonts. Okay. So for example, here, show Ropoto. I can search for any font that I want. If you know the font name, you see here a collection of a lot of fonts, even different languages. Popular font is Robotic, Maserati as well. Monserrati. This is very popular font. And notice that the very popular fonts are that they don't have the serifs, sans serif. So I want to use that font in my web page. So you can click on that font. You will see how it look like. And they have thin, which 100, thin italic. They have different versions of that font. And when it's bold, it's gonna look like this. You can change it here to medium, black, and you can select italic and it will make it italic to see how the font look like. Okay. So you can click get the font. You can download all of them if you want. You can get the embedded version, which I prefer to use that. So when you click in the embedded, you can use this link here that have the URL for the font. All you need to do is just copy all of that. You don't have to copy the first two ones. This is pre-connect to try to pre-fetch the font to make it a little bit faster. But you can copy the last link here. So I can copy it and paste it in my head here. This is a link tag. It's like you linking a style sheet. It's technically font. You can consider it as a style sheet here will be added to your, okay. It's automatically will copy the other two, but I don't need them. And it will tell you how to use it. You font family, you put the name of the font here. So I have a paragraph ID fonts. This paragraph has an align font. So I will use fonts. And I can actually put the name of the font here. And let's see. Notice here that we have different font that we get it online. All we need to do is just copy the link from Google Font and we can use it in our web page or our website. You can select multiple fonts. Let's say use this one because it's look a little bit different from the one we're using. I remove the previous one, get the font. I can copy this link, paste it here. So I have two fonts. And to use it, that's the font family for it. So I can copy it. It's a cursive. And paste it here. So it will override the previous one. And if you go, notice that the font get changed for that paragraph. Okay, so that's something you want to do with your website. You want to select nice fonts because especially if there's a lot of text in your web page. The default font that will be used with your browser, if you didn't change the font, is going to be the Times New Romans. Like for box one, I never changed the text. If you try to inspect that, you go to the computed. Actually, it have come from the body. Not sure where it's get added, but I know that it's that Times New Roman. That's the default, which is a serif font by default. Okay, probably in your web page you want to change the font, and you can change it for the whole page if you selected, for example, body. Okay, that once you pass the font family here, it will affect everything, but it's not going to work because we're using an IDs here. So we're going to override that with certain font families. But if you want to change it for the whole page, that's the best place where you select the whole body of your document and set the whole font that you will use across your web page. Okay. Any questions before we go to break? You can paste your questions if you want in the chat. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll see you. Gonna set up the timer here. I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, guys, so we're gonna continue. Any question about font sizes before we go over different concepts in CSS? Or how to get the Google font and embedded in your web page? Because definitely in tomorrow project, we will be using an outsourced Google font. Okay, now let's talk about some concepts in CSS or problems that you might have. For example, one of the biggest issues is how to lay out a web page or create a layout. So let's say we have a simple card. Okay, let's. I'm going to be talking about layouts. I'm going to create a boilerplate layouts. And I will have a div. Then I'm going to give it an ID of a card. Then I'm going to have a paragraph. I'm going to do Laura, some dummy text. And I want to put an image here. And I can go to online and go to Chrome. And I can go to unsplash.com and get any image. Like, let's say, sign up. Let's get this image. And I can download it, small version of it. I'm going to create a folder here. I'm going to call it images. And go to downloads, where the image is located in downloads folder. And you can drag the image right here. I'm going to rename it like card dash image. Okay. Now I want to use this image here. Anybody know what should I pass to the source? What is the pass for the image in that case? You can paste it in the chat. Well, the image is located inside a folder. This file, you have to go to inside the images folder first. That's correct, Stephen. So you have to, in the current directory, if you press /, Visual Studio Code will help you. You can't find the image here. You find a folder called images. You click on images, and then you're going to find your image, and you click on it. So you have to go inside the images folder relatively to the current location, and you select the image itself. Good. And that's all. I can now open my Visual Studio Code, but that's not what I want. I want to style this as a card in the middle of the screen, and I want the image to be on my right and the text to be on my left. Let's try that. Let's first try to style the card. Actually going to create layouts here. Move it, image, and close everything. I'll keep that. Now, since I put it here, I have to go step one up. So I have to go ... That's mean going one up to go out from the layouts and then enter to the image folder. Okay, now I can open it with the live server. Good. I'm going to add a style sheet here. Style.css. First, I want to reset the browser default where all the margin, set it to 0. Heading, set them to 0. And also, since I don't want to be calculating how much padding from the width of the box that I'm going to give it, I can use box sizing border box. And that will save you the headache for doing all the math. No visual effect here. If you refresh, actually no visual because I created the style sheet, but I never link it to the HTML. So to link the style sheet, as we learned, we use the link tag. And if you press enter, it automatically put the href where you can use, you can put the name of the file right away, style.css. And immediately you find that all the spacing and all the padding were removed. Good. Now I have this ID card. I can select that. And set the max width, or yeah, I can set the max width 500 pixel. I want a margin. Let's say push it down a little bit, the card. First, let me add the border so you can see it. Border. 1 pixel solid. And let's use light gray, CCC. This is a hex value. And as a cool trick, if you use the same letter or the same number, 111, these are the shades of gray. 222, lighter color. And you can use 555. They will always be shades of gray. Okay, so the light one, as you go increase the hex number can go all the way to from 0 to 9, and then from A to F. So if you put FFF, that's white. 000, that's the darkest black you can get. Okay, so I'm going to use CCC. And notice that you have the border here, but the image, since the image is bigger, it will go beyond that border because I never set the content here, or what is the height or the width of this div. I will add margin 50 pixels from the top, auto, left and right. Okay, good. Still not what I want, but we're getting there. I want to add a padding, let's say top and bottom, do 20 pixel, left and right, I'll do 50 pixels. Okay, we added the padding, good. Notice now that the image is within, but the image have a bigger width. I can target the image that inside the card, be more specific. Lorem ipsum. This is just a dummy text I generated. You can generate any dummy text to test your web page by typing lorem here. I think it's, not sure it's Latin or Spanish, but it's dummy text. It have no meaning. So I can select the image by typing image. Okay. Or you can be more specific that I want the image that inside my card, and you separate them by space. So that's the key. Even if you hover over them, it will tell you that the element was an ID card, and nested inside it, there is an image. Okay. So I'll set the width to be, let's do this 900. The width here, let's do 300 pixels. Good. But still, the image is not right next to the text. Well, to put it nice next to the text, that's a layout. I want to lay out the text, then the image on this side. And let me actually add a border radius of 10 pixels. So I'll have a border here. And in order to do that, to put this text on the left and the image on the right, previously, in the older versions of the web, before the CSS added more properties, they used to use tables, and table can solve this issue for you. So table is just an HTML table, and you can use the table tag like this. And in that case, you can add a table row. I'm going to have one row, and the first column, which is table data, will be the paragraph. Second table data, second column, will be the image. And that's, we'll put them right next to each other. And trust me, many websites back in the 90s was using table to lay out elements, to put them right next to each other and put them together. But it's pretty complex to use tables, and table is mainly to use to create a table, not to lay out element. CSS was introducing something else beside the table. Is called flood. And let me go over the flood. Let me copy that. And here, using tables to lay out elements. You can end up with more markup in your HTML page. Okay, so the second solution is actually this solution here. It's not the best, using percentage and display properties. So what I can do, I can get here, and I already put the card to be 900 pixel. So for the image, I will say its width to be 40% of the card. You can do 50. That will be 50. You can set the percentage. Let's do 30. And the paragraph here to be width to complete the percentage 30. Then we're going to have 70%, right? But let me see. Because we're adding the border. No, that's correct, 70%. But they're still not next to each other. The reason is because the paragraph is a block level element, so it will take the full space. But we can use the display to make it inline element. And if you do it inline, it will not take in 70%, which is weird. Let's do 50%. See, that's it. Oh yeah, I know why. If you're using inline, it's not going to work. So I give you the reason, because when you use inline, you can't control the width. So it's inline element that can take other inline elements right next to it. I can prove that to you. But especially if it's less text like this. And now it's inline. Both are next to each other, right? Good. But the problem that when you turn an element to an inline, for example, if I have, this is very good that we're bringing this up. If I have a link, which I know it's an inline, not going to go anywhere, Google. If you try to set this link width to, let's say, 300 pixel and add a border to see it, 1 pixel solid black. Notice it's not going to be 300 pixel. You can't set a width. It will just take as much space as the content. So that's a little bit confusing. What we should do? Well, you have, beside block and inline, you have another mix between them, which is the best of both. It's called inline block. Okay, and let me get back this to Lorem here. Inline block And now I can control the width 70%. And the image, the width, to be 30%. And I want to make the paragraph, it's already inline block here. Let me make it 50. It's because the 69, because we're adding a border and it would take in from the widths. Okay, they are right next to each other, but the problem is, notice that the image here, you have the white space. You can do vertical alignment, middle, and you put the text in the middle. So you was able to lay it out, but you have to do a lot of CSS for that. You have to do inline block, set the widths, and it's a trial and error way. And it's not the best approach. But again, developers used to do that back in the days. Then CSS came up with another approach, which called float, that you can float an element to the left or the right. Let me format the document. Okay. Comment this. Let's use the float. The card here, save that. And I can comment this. Or we can keep it, it's fine. So I'm going to be working with the second one. So let's call it card 2. And all the CSS will go away. But now I can copy all of this. Or actually, I don't have to copy the card. I can just put a comma, card 2. So this CSS will apply to both cards. Good. And for the paragraph, instead of using inline and 69% and all of that, we don't have to do that anymore. All I need to do is just set it to float to the left, and for the image to be float to the right. And of course, the image, I need the width to be 300 pixels. But you will see something. This is card 2. Card 2, not card 1. Card 1, we're going to keep it as a reference. Good. But you will see that the image going to be outside your div. The reason for that, when you put an element to float, technically you're taking out of the context of this div. One way you can fix this, you can add let's remember the not the vertical line, not the visibility. Forget the name of it. Property. It's like the one that you can add the scroll and remove the scroll. Let me check the W3 school. W3 schools. Can go to W3 schools. You will have a list of all the properties here. Just, I don't know why my brain is not getting them. Box, margin, background, box outline, icons, lists, tables. Let's go to the flood. Here we go. Flood it to the right. We're putting the image that's similar to the example that we're trying. And if you go right here, no, that's not what I'm looking, because we're adding that to the right.
This here, the image we floated to the left. Let's go to float samples. Oh. Okay. Float left, no float. Here we're doing the flood none. Overflow. That's the property that I'm looking for. Overflow, because technically this image is spilled out of this div. So that means there is an overflow that's coming out of this div. So what I need here to set the overflow, not hidden, visible, no, auto. Good. So now I have the image right here. So as you can see, the content. I will float this paragraph to the left. It's already floated to the left, but I never said how much the percentage of the parent. I can say that the width to be 50% of the parent. Here you have the image and you have the text right next to each other. You can even control the percentage of that you want. You want a 60%. There you go. And you can control the space between the two elements because you're floating this to the right, to the left, and floating the image to the right. Okay, and that was introduced to CSS. Floating is great, but still having some problems. And let me show you what is the problem is. I have the paragraph, the image. I floated the paragraph to the left and the image to the right. Let me add some element here. Let's say an H2, another element. Okay, and let's do this 40%. What happened? I didn't control where this H2 to be. You'll find that it get injected between the two elements. Why is that? Because when you flood this text to that side, you take it out of the constants and you put it, you flood that element to that side, and you have another element, it will eventually become between them. You have to, whenever you use a flooding of any element, you have to clear it. You have to clear the flooding of that element. It's very important to do that. And that was one of the problems of using floods, and it's causing a lot of confusion. And that's why CSS came with some modern layout concept like flexbox and the grid box. Okay, how to fix this problem? Any flood you have to clear it. For example, this paragraph after this one, or this, paragraph here. So the cart 2 paragraph, I have to clear both sides. You can clear the flood by both sides, or you want to clear the left because we use the left here. But it's not working because I want it to be after the paragraph. So you can use a pseudo class here. And I know we didn't cover pseudo class and pseudo elements. It's actually going to use pseudo elements where you use colons that I want after the paragraph. So you can use 2 colon after. You want to clear it. And also for the image, I mean, after the image, I want to use clear. It's better to use clear both from any flooding. After. Paragraph, the image, I'm clearing both sides. If you go here,
You go to flood, you'll have the clear property. It's for the div here. So you set it in the div, you can have to clear for the second div. Oh, because I didn't add the content. When you use the after here, you have to specify the content that you want to inject after the paragraph. So you have to use content. I'm not going to add anything. Content. Not going to add anything. Let's see. Save. Still. Here they displayed as a table. Let's see this example. So you have a div that have a border, 3 pixels. Okay. Padding, and you have an image, image 2. And you start floating the image. This image. I want to see where they're using this class. Oh, you have to apply the clear to the new element here. Clear right, the image 1, yeah. So for the new element, in that case, we can remove this, remove this. For my H2 that I'm going to be showing here, because what I want, the end goal that I want to use, that this H2 is going to be underneath both of them. So this H2 here, do clear both, and it's going to be at the bottom. Okay, because I want to clear the flooding before I want to start the next content that I'm going to add. Okay, the reason, because of that confusion, they came up with some modern ways to use layouts. Let's take an example. And I'm just going to touch in the Flexbox. I'm not going to deeply cover everything about the Flexbox. I'm just going to touch on it with an example, how to use Flexbox, because Flexbox is by far the most popular layout nowadays, at least. Flex layout. So let's say we're going to do a navigation bar. .html. I'm going to have a style sheet. Close that. So I'm going to have nav bar. And now for this navigation bar, we can use a div, but HTML have actually an element that have a meaning that you can use it with navigation bars like nav. Okay. To use a Flexbox, you have to select, similar to the example that we have the image and we have the text. These are called flex items. This is an item. This is an item that I want to move them within a container. So you should have a flex container that contain these 2 items. And you can display them in a row or you can display them in a column. Okay. So simply, this navigation bar will have a link. It's not going to take me anywhere. And I'm going to put a logo right here. And after this logo, I will add a button and say login. And if you open this with the visuals with the live server, let's see how this is look like. It's going to look like this. You have the link, you have the login line. Let's start that by simply adding our style sheet. Style. And I'm going to have my navigation first. Let's reset all the browser's default and see what is the effect will be here. That the margin, 0, padding, 0, box sizing, little box. Immediately remove all the spaces that by default provided by the browser. Now I want this navigation bar to have a padding, let's say 10 pixels. Actually, let's do it 20 pixels. And let's have background color. Let's do purple. Okay. Let's do text color, or the color of the text in this navigation bar, to be white. It's not going to reflect right away. Just in case if you're adding any text, it have to be white. You might ask why this is not going to turn white, because this is a link, it's not a text. Okay. I can select all the links to have a color of white, and that will change the color of the link. And also, anybody know what is the property to remove the underline of the link? Because the default, it will have an underline. Anybody might know how to do that. We didn't go over it, but probably learned about it previously. It's called a text decoration. Text decoration, none. That means we're going to remove the underline. And let's select the whole body. And I don't like the default font. So I'm going to do for the old text in my page to have a font family. And I'm going to use the Arial. Good. This link, I want to make the logo a little bit bigger. So I can do font size. And I'm going to do, for example, 3 rem. That's really big. You can put, for example, 1.5 or 1.75 rems. Okay, that will be multiplied by the 16. I want to make it bold, so it's going to be font weight bold. Good. So this is the logo. I already styled the logo. Now this button here, I need to style it. Any button. So I want to remove the border, none. Anybody know what is the property that when I hover over it, it will give me a pointer? We used that yesterday. The cursor pointer is correct. Now we have pointer here. I will add a padding, top and bottom to be 10 pixels. Left and right, 20 pixels. Okay. Now I want the background color. Let's say orange. I want the border radius to be 10 pixels. So I have a nice button. Let's do the text color to be white. Good. Now, also the font size inside here, let's do 1.25 rem, or 1 rem is fine. That's gonna be 16 pixel. So I like the button. Now the question is how we can do the layout. I want to push this button all the way to here. Well, we can use flood, but then we have to clear the flood after the navigation bar to get the page. It's not the best solution. The best solution is that navigation now have 2 childs. These 2 child will be the flex items and the nav is considered to be the flex container. And I can specify the nav here, and there's some properties will affect the container, and there are some properties that will affect the items. I want to display it. By default, it's a block level element, but I want to display it as a flex. Notice that you might not going to see anything, only the space between them removed. Because the default, when you select flex, that it will display them in a row. So you can use a property if you want to change that. So for example, I'll get back here, flex row. Oh, sorry, display flex. Now they're in row. That's the default behavior. And if I want to show them in column, for example, I have to use something called flex direction. And flex direction, you can set columns, so they're going to be on top of each other. Look what's going to happen. Now they're on top of each other. I can change that to row, which is the default. So I can control the flow of the element. I can do row reverse. So it's going to be from the other side. I can do column reverse, that the bind will be before the text. And you control that from the container, which is the navigation bar. Okay, so I want to keep it the default. But now, since you set it to flex, you can control the spacing around the element and also the alignment of the element. To control the spacing, you can use justify content property. How you want to justify them? You want to, the default, I think, is the start in that case. So they are from the beginning. We can use the end. They're going to be at the end. We can use to center, that we're going to center it. That how to control the space. We can use space between, that we're going to put the element, the space between the flex items. And that will put all the space between the two items. That's really nice. You can also use space around, so it will distribute the space around them. So the space here, and you have space here, and you have space here. You also have space evenly. So distribute the space evenly, that you have the space equal to the space equal to the space. So you can control the space around them. And that's in short what we want to do. We want just technically the space between. You can also align them. Either put them in the center, stretch them, and so on. But this is the navigation bar, and we're using the flex. And as you can see, it's much simpler approach to lay anything in your web page. You don't have to control widths by percentage. You just set the container to be flex, and the default is row. So we added only two properties, that we set the display to flex, and we control the space between the items. So if I added another item here, now all the space between the three items. Now the question is, how can I put these two elements only by themselves on the side? How can I do that? So I want to have the logo right here, and these two binds to be all the way on the right. Any ideas? Because I don't want this bind to be in the middle, but I want to have two binds. Well, the flex work, keep in mind, by the number of the children. I have one children here, 2 and 3. So make the container have only 2 children. That's a hint how to do that. And instead of 3 children, make it have 2 children. So I can wrap these 2 elements in one child for the flex container. So I can cut them and now have a div. Now the nav have 2 children. the first one and the second one, right? And paste them right here. And now you have the two binds right next to each other. Okay, because flex work with the number of children. Have 1 and 2. These two are not flex, they are combined together. And your browser actually have a nice tool to view the flexes. Now I want to get back to my page. And if I inspect, you will see here that the nav bar, this is the flex container. You will have this flex icon. You can click on it, and it will show the flex that the space is between these two items. This is one item, and both of these two are another item in my container, and they're separated by space. You can play around the display flex here and select the flex direction. Remember that this is the row, that's the default. I can show them as a column. Notice that when I put them in a column, that means the first child is going to be on top, or the flex item on top, and the second flex item is going to be at the bottom because it's a flex column. You can do row reverse, so you can have the logo on the other side. Notice that I didn't have to change my HTML. The HTML is pretty much the same, but you play with the CSS or the flex direction. Also, I can have the logo at the bottom. So I'll keep it row. Here you have more advanced like flex wrap, and see how this is the CSS property. So you can test the CSS properties here on your web page. Align content. Since they have the same height, it's not going to make a huge difference. But this is justify. Either you put them in center, start, end, space between. That's what I use in my CSS. Space around. So you will have this space, and then this space, same size, but also this item have space here and space here. So you'll find the one in the middle a little bit much bigger. Evenly, all the spaces are evenly distributed. So I'll keep it space between. Align items. See, align items, it will align them vertically. So this is in the center. This is the flex start, flex end. This is stretch and baseline. Okay. Another thing that I want to show beside flex. Any question about flex? For some students, it's a little bit hard concept to understand, but there's a nice website like play games with flex is called Flex Frog, something like that. Froggy Flex. Flexbox Froggy. And you have this frog and you have this item and you want to send. So it will give you the instructions here. I want to send this frog to its home. How can I do that? Justify. Content. I can put end. Now I'm going to put it at the end. I will now align it to the end. Next. And you can play games here. We want to align them both here to be a center. So justify content. To be in the center because their homes are in the center. And you can play that type of game, and they have 24 level. It will make you fully understand how Flexbox works, especially with the align items as well. But now I want to go over something that we will use in our tomorrow project, which, as I mentioned, the pseudo classes and pseudo elements. In CSS, you can use pseudo classes and pseudo elements, and they're very popular with bind. I want to change the color of the bind when I hover over it. So it will have a state that when the user hover over it. Whenever you change a state, that's a pseudo class. Pseudo elements, if you're changing a piece of the element or a piece of the text of the element, either like after it, before it, that's pseudo element. So I have a pseudo class here that classes like the button, you only use one colon. You'll notice here that you have two colons, elements with two colons, and classes here with single colon. Single colon is a class. Two colons are elements. So I want the hover class. So when the user hover over the button, I want to change the background color. So the background color, and I can still use the orange, but I will get a darker version of it. I'm going to make it darker so I can hover over it, get a dark version of it. So now let's give it a try. Notice you're going to have this nice effect by using pseudo classes. Classes, only one column. Elements, two columns. Element, that means it's a piece of the text or piece of the element. However, pseudo class, it's dependent on a state. Are you focusing on an element? Are you hovering over an element? When you hover over it, you want to change the style. When you focus on an element, you want to change the style. For example, after the navigation bar, I might have an input field. An input field is an HTML that can be used with forms where you can enter data here. Now I want to style this input field a little bit. So I can select the input field, can add margin top, 10 pixels, width to be 75% of the screen, and margin, I will center it. So auto. Because it's an inline element. No, because the parent element never have 100%. So the body here, the width, I'll make it 100 view width. Inspect. Input field. Auto. The parent is the body. It's taking the full width. Not sure why it's not centered in the middle. Let me try to display it as block. Because before default, it's, yeah, now that's changed it. It will make centered in the middle. The default of an input field, it's inline. I will change the height as well to be, let's say, 1.5 rem. Or actually, let's do it 2 rem. Okay. When you click on it, you have this like ugly. This is the default of the browser. I find it ugly, but you can change its color. It's called outline. It's not a border. So you can do outline. None. So now when you click on it, I'm not going to have outline. You can add padding to the left, 1 rem. Here, so I can start typing my text. You want a font size inside to be 1 rem. So the text is going to be a little bit bigger. Now, the state here is you can focus on it when you're going to have this placeholder blinking, or the cursor will be blinking, and you can focus outside when you click outside. So there is another pseudo class that I can add input. which is called focus. When I focus on this input field, I want the background color to be, let's say, aqua. Now, it's not going to be aqua by default, only when you focus on it. Now, when you focus and you click on it and it's active, you can type in here. Pretty cool. So these are called pseudo classes, usually with one column. Pseudo elements, they are with two columns. And you can use, for example, like the link here. You can use the link, and you can use first letter. So it's a piece of the word. I can make the color red. Notice only the first letter. You can use first line. So it's part of the text. And Visual Studio Code will give you a whole list of pseudo element and pseudo classes. And pseudo element used to colons, and it's affect a piece of the text of the element, or a piece of, like, could be a line, could be first letter, before or after. Just gonna here have the first letter for you. However, pseudo classes affect a state. Are you focusing? Are you hovering? That's called pseudo classes, and it's only one colon. Okay, we covered a lot of concepts so far. Like we went over floating, how you can float elements. I highly recommend that you don't use floating. It can cause a lot of problems. Nobody use it nowadays. That was used before CSS was introduced. Floating introduced Flexbox and grid system. Also, we covered flex pseudo classes and pseudo elements. Definitely, we're going to use them in tomorrow project. That's why I want to go over them. Any question before we go to break? Anything that we covered that don't make sense to you or have a question about it? Okay, let's take a quick 10-minute break. So Google timer, set. See you in 10 minutes. Okay, guys, so we're going to continue. And let's practice technically the same properties that we've been using. And let's build like an employee card or a card for a user. Just going to call it here practice. I'm going to create an index.html. I'm going to get a user or a person image. So I'm going to go to Chrome. I'm going to go to Unsplash. Try to get person. You can have multiple images. You can do man, or you can be more specific. You want a female or male. I'm going to put male. Okay. Let me get this guy image. Get downloaded. Can open it. Gonna paste his image here. This is the guy. Gonna rename it to person. Okay. Now I'm gonna create a boilerplate here for the HTML code, and I'm gonna call it employee card. I'm gonna use a div here, and you can use main. Main is more descriptive that this is the main page or the main tag in my page, similar to the div. It don't have any visual differences. It's primarily more descriptive. You describe your web page. I can add a style sheet.css. And of course, the style sheet, I have to link it here. I'm going to link my style sheet. Now, my question to you, how can I center anything to the middle of the screen based on whatever we covered on layouts? Let's say I want to have here paragraph. This is in center. How can I put it regardless of the size of the screen, regardless of the device that's using this? How can I center it? I want to put it right here in the center. Even if I resize the page, it will always stay in the center. Any ideas? I'm going to be using flooding. What do you think? Well, you can use Flexbox for that. Well, you know that you can use text center that will center it, in that case, horizontally. So I can, first let's reset everything. Padding, 0. Margin, 0. And this 2-box sizing photo box. And I can select this paragraph and I can do text align center. And that will put it in center, but that's going to be only horizontally, not vertically. Well, to make it vertically, you have to give to the whole page the body here to be the height of the viewport. So I can select the body here, height to be 100% of the view height. Now the whole body of my document will be the view height. You can use margin top, and you can say like 50%, but it's not going to be exactly the center. Just after the 50%, you'll find the text. So it's not the best approach. What we can do, instead of text align and then margin top, we can set the body to be displayed as flex. And we know that we can control an element with a flex container. And I can do justify content to be center. So it's going to center it horizontally. And to center it vertically, I can do align items center. And now it's going to be exactly in the center of the page, regardless of the width and regardless of the height. This will always center in the screen. And that's exactly what I want because I want to place my card at the center of the screen. So I will use the flex box here. Okay. And notice that I didn't touch the item. The body here is the flex box, and I have the main, which is going to be my card eventually, and I want to center this card right here. Okay, can call this ID card, and I'm going to start describing how the card looks like. This card, I should have the user image in the top. So I'm going to have an image where we're going to show the person. It's going to be big image by default. I can control the image here. Set the width. Let's say 100 pixels. The image like this. Actually, let's do 150. And I want to set the height 150 as well to make it a square. Okay. So now I have the image within my card. So I have the card, I have the person image. Then I'm going to have an H1. Then I'm going to have the title of that employee. Let's say front end developer. Then I'm going to have an H2 with the name of the person. Let's say John Doe. So front end developer. And we have here John Doe. Good. Next, I'm going to have some description, like paragraph. I'm going to add some lorem. That's a lot of text. That's fine. We're going to fix everything here. I'm just putting the structure of the card, how it's going to look like. Taking so much width. I'm just going to add some description here. Good. Next, I want to have some icons. Like, for example, social media icons. And to use icons, you can download them. You can search, for example, Facebook icon. And you can go for SVGs, transparent or anything, and you can download the icons. But if you want to add a lot of icons, that's going to be a lot of images to load. There are some dedicated libraries that will allow you to use icons. There's so many libraries. One of them is Font Awesome. If you search Font Awesome, you can start for free, and you can explore the icons. For example, I can do Facebook, search for any icon, and you'll notice that you have multiple icons for Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram, Twitter, which is now called X. So you can have some icons. You have dedicated libraries for icons. Now the question, how to use this library in my code. These icons are simply CSS style sheet. Similar as we added fonts to our page, we can use Font Awesome. So what I will do, you can search for Font Awesome CDN. And CDN is short for Content Delivery Network. That means it's located in a remote computer. It's a styling sheet that's located in a remote computer. And you want to get the URL of that style sheet. And if you go here in CDN.js, you'll find it's simply a CSS file. And if you take that code URL and paste it here, will give you all the code of the CSS that will be used for this library. So it's a CSS library. So you can copy the link tag to link the icons. I can paste it here. And now I can use any of these icons in Font Awesome. So I can go back to Font Awesome, icons, and I want the Facebook icon. Search for it. You can click on it. Here, this is square Facebook, so I'm probably going to get the circle ones. Or let's get the square. Notice that they have specific classes since it's a CSS library, so it have classes. And usually the tag that you use is the I, short for icon. And you can copy it. You don't have to memorize it. You can copy it from the Font Awesome. Now let's see if it's gonna look here, the icon. Here we go. We have the Facebook icon at the bottom. I can copy this. And let's try they have Instagram. And they have the Instagram here, square as well. Let's try Twitter. They have the Twitter square. Link. Then do I have that one? Probably I'm spelling it wrong. Let's search. Oh, missing an E. Can copy it here. So these are the social media for that guy. We can, since he's a developer, let's get GitHub as well. GitHub. And we can add the square. Here we go. We get it as a square. So I have my icons here, the social media, and this is the structure of the page. I can also add a button, contact, or message. So you can message him. And let's add another button. Schedule a meeting. Okay, so you have two buttons or two actions on that card. And this is the structure. I'm going to change it a little bit later, but I'm just putting all my thoughts on HTML code. And now we can go to the styling. Notice that we give the ID here card. That's what I want to do. I'm just going to select the card. I can add a border of 1 pixel, solid, CCC. So we added the border. I'm going to add a padding of 1 rem from the 4 corners, 16 pixels. Actually, let's make it 2 rem. Good. I'll add a border radius, 10 pixels for the card. Good. I'll add a background color, and I'm going to use the white, or let's use the azure. Let's use white. But I'm just going to hover over it to make it a little bit darker than the background. Good. Now this image, I want to make it a circle. Anybody know how to do that? It's one of the properties that we covered that can apply to the images as well. Same as border radius. So I want to set the border radius to be 50%. Notice that the image will be like a circle right away. Okay. Because you can add a percentage for the border radius. It's very important that the height and the width have the same value. Notice if they are not, say 200, it's not going to be, it's going to be like an ellipse. It's not exactly square, circle. Okay, now we have it as a circle. I can select my card and display it as flex as well. Display flex, but it will put it as a row. That's the default. I want to set the flex direction to be column so they can be on top of each other. Now they're on top of each other. I want to add them in the center, so I can use justify content center. Let me take a look. Card. Okay. Makes sense because these are inline items, so I can change the image to be displayed as inline block. Let's do end just to test it. It's not. We can inspect and see what is the problem. Try to troubleshoot it. This is our flex. Can go to flex and justify content. You can try to change it. Okay, so it's align items to the center because they're in column. Okay, so we're going to do align items center. That will center everything for us. Here they are centered. So I was able to center the image, his title, and also his name, but everything on top of each other. But that's fine for now. Let me, the body here set the font family. That's going to be the default, the Arial. Now we changed the font. Now it's up to you. Do you want to add margin after the image before the title? Yes, I want to do that. You can add the margin either to the bottom of the image, or you can add the margin to the top of the H1. I'll add it to the image, since I'm in the image, margin bottom. Let's use 1 rem. So we're adding a spacing here, 1 rem. Good. This H1, I can set the font size to be 2 rem. Okay, change it to 3 rem. Let's make it better. 1.5 rem. 1.75 rem. And also, I'll add a spacing margin bottom. I'll make the space equal since I put 1 rem underneath the image. I'll put 1 rem here as well. Or actually, let's put half 0.25 rem. Good. Now for the H2, the font size, I'm going to put 1.25 rem. Margin bottom, 1 rem. Good. I can change the colors. So I can set the color. I'm going to set it to dark gray, which is 333. Okay. Now for the paragraph, I just wanted the margin bottom to be 1 rem. Now I have these icons. They're on top of each other. I don't want them to the top of each other. Any idea how can I fix that? I want them to be right next to each other. They're on top of each other because they are flex items within the cart. Any suggestions? We can wrap them inside a div, right? So we can cut them and paste them inside a div. Now they're going to be inside each other. I want the space between them to have similar space. So I can give an ID here, social media. And I can go right here, social media. And I can display it as a flex. That's the container. And the default is going to be flex road, and that's what I want. It's not going to be any spacing between them. So I can select or justify content to be space between. And it's not working because let's see why. It should, because this div, social media, if you inspect it, I see. It's not a full percent. It's widths. It don't have a width. So I don't understand what is the space that you want to distribute. So we have to make it the widths to be 100% of the parent. Here you go. So they are get distributed. And we're going to have a margin to the bottom, 1 rem. Good. Now I want these icons to have a bigger size or to be more bigger. Probably change their color. And I can select or target all the icons. And you can change an icon size by using the font size. And let's say 1 rem. Let's do 5 rem. They're really big. 3 rem. 2.5 rem. 2 rem. They look good. And now I can target each icon and change its color. So they are very easy. You can change them. So I can select the Facebook background color. Let's do blue. Oh, not the background, the color, sorry. You consider the icon as a text. So text color, similar as we added font size. So we have blue. And Instagram. Let's make it orange. Twitter. Set the color to be light blue. Let's do the Facebook and LinkedIn blue. Good. So you have your icons here. When I click on them, I want to have the cursor. So cursor, pointer. When I hover over them, here you go. Good. Now I want to work with these 2 buttons. But before we move forward, is there a way that we can, you see here that we have some repetitive codes, like margin bottom, margin bottom, margin bottom. We keep repeating that. Is there a way that we can make it less code? Yes, definitely. We can select all the element that have margin bottom, like an H2. Select the paragraph and select the social media. And for all this element, I'm just going to add the margin bottom. This is like a list. So I can remove it here, remove this whole thing, and remove here. And you're not going to see any Everything looked fine so far. Okay. I want to add a border to the image. Border. 3 pixels. Solid white. Let's actually add 5 pixels. Again, you can style it the way that you want it. Just gonna have this white border. Good. Now I'm gonna be working on these binds. These binds, I want to put them right next to each other. So I need to wrap them with a div. I'm gonna call it action because they're action binds. And for that action, displayed flex, space, justify content, space between. And it's not going to do the space between because it have to be widths. You have to explicitly give the widths 100%. And now you will have this separation between them. I want now target the binds, both binds. I want to give each bind a specific width. So I can set the widths to be 30% of its container. Let's do 40%, 45. Okay, 45 sounds good. Also, let's add a margin top of 1 rem. I already have 1 rem, so they're going to be collapsing. Let's do 2 rem. Good. I want to remove the borders. Border, none. I keep them for now because it's completely removed. I will add padding, top and bottom, to be 10 pixels. It's a lot. 5 pixels, 3 pixels, 2 pixels. Okay, 5 pixels is good. Let's add a border radius of 10 pixels. Cursor, pointer, background color. Let's use chocolate. No. Color the text white. Okay. And I can remove the border now. Okay, so I have these 2 binds here at the bottom that you can schedule a meeting. Don't forget to set the font size to be 1 rem. That's the, so we'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and also I want to style or have hover over effect in these binds. So when you hover over them, probably make the color a little bit darker or a little bit lighter. So I will have use the hover pseudo class. And I want to set the background. I can get a darker version of this color by hovering over it. Get the hex value for it. And now when you hover over it, you will have that effect. Okay. Again, you can change anything in the style. This is really basic styling here. Want to also show you another CSS property that we didn't talk about, which is called box shadow. So you can add a drop-down shadow for any element by using box shadow. In that case, I want to add a shadow to my card. So I gotta go to the card, which is right here. I have to use box shadow. And the way the box shadow, you specify the x-axis offset and the y-axis offset. You want to offset the shadow from the x direction by how many pixels and from the y direction by how many pixels. So I can add 5 pixels, 5 pixels. So it's going to be 5 pixels from the x-axis. So let's make it different so you can see it. 10 pixels and 2 pixels only from the y-axis. So I'm going on the x direction 10. So it's going to be 10 pixels in that direction and 2 pixels down. And you can put the color of the shadow. Let's do black. Okay. So you see here 10 and 2 pixels at the bottom. Okay, that's the 3 required input. You can change the color, you can make it navy. Now the shadow have a navy color, you can make it red. Shadow has make it red. I can increase the Y direction here to 20. You can add negative values. So the Y direction when you add a negative value, it's going to be from the top, the shadow at the top. And the X direction is going to be the negative X axis. Okay. So I'm going to do it 5 and 5. Okay. And I will use, let's do the gray color. Okay. So this is our shadow. Or let's use black. Why not? There is another property or input that you can add here is the blur effect. How much blur your the shadow you want to be. And it's numeric value. So I can add 1 pixel. By default is 0. As you increase this number, 2 pixels, it's going to get blurred. So if I add 10 pixels, notice it start to get blurred away. I can add 20 pixels, 50 pixels, 100 pixels. It's getting blurred. So you can use 5 pixels or 10 pixels. Okay. And you can reduce this number. You can play around with these numbers until you get the good shadow that you're looking for. Okay. There's another value here you can add, which is the spread, but I usually don't use it. And you can make this black a little bit lighter color, so you can control the shadow color, and you will have this shadow. Okay. And again, you can go to the W3 School. It will list all the properties or all the inputs for W3 School, and you can do box shadow. And there is also text shadow. Okay. And you will see here, didn't go over the description. So you can go to the tutorial, CSS, and box module. I don't think they describe it here. You can search box. Pretty sure I saw it previously that they're listing all the description of these numbers here. I can put it for you here. So box shadow will take the first one is the X offset, then the Y offset, then the blur, then finally the shadow. color. These are the values that we're using right here. And this is the final. You can customize this a little bit. Let's say I want, or style it a little bit. I want the top part here to have certain color. For example, this is the image. I'm going to add it in a div. Add a class image container. And right here, before the image container, let's make the color or background color to be navy. And the width to be 100%. And I can, the problem here that I added the padding to the whole card. That's the problem that I have at this point. And also the image, I have one rem here at the bottom. I can move it here. Now my problem is the padding, because the padding is surrounding the whole card. I adding the padding here to rem to the whole card, which is the whole card. I don't want to do that. I probably, if this is the case scenario, you have another div here, probably card content. And I'm going to add it to the card content only. So as you can see, you just dynamically changed the structure of HTML based on the styling. So if I save that, it will look a little bit weird. Because notice here, this is center. So for the card, I'm gonna have a card content. With the card content only, I'm gonna add the rem or add the padding. There you go. So now you can see the top don't have any padding, but the bottom here have all the padding. I will display the flex and all the flex here, add it to the content, not through the card. Now I want to center this image and add some padding to my image container. So I can add a padding of 1 rem. And I can center the image, can do text align center. That center the image. Good. Now the question is, why the border radius shown at the bottom but not at the top here? We can do something about it, like the border radius only for the top. So want it to be similar, 10 pixels from here. Now it's going to be the top and the bottom as well. I want this corner and this corner, 10 pixels, 10 pixels at the bottom, 0 and 0. Good. There you go. Now I can make it a little bit lighter. Good. So you see, based on the design that you want, you can make some changes. I can go to the image. I can add margin to the top, 10 pixel, 20 pixels. Okay. No. For that, to get that, we need to use position, which we didn't cover position. But I'm happy with the result, or the final results, as you can see. You can make any changes you want.
one thing that we probably talked about in the HTML that I want, when I hover over this image, I want to have some effect, or even over the card as overall. So when I hover over the card, I want to give like the card has been hovering over the screen. So I can select the card. That's the full card. When I hover over it, I'll change the box shadow effect. So I'll make it 5 pixels, and blur it more and make this a little bit lighter. Let's take a look. When I hover over the card, you see, it's going to become very like interactive card. And also for the image, let's have a hover over effect. Hover. I'm going to change the border. And instead of white, we can make it yellow. Make it light yellow. Perfect. So again, feel free. That was just a small practice that we put everything together. We started from the scratch. We started from the HTML code, make the adjustment here to use the flexbox. And also, I wanted to show you how you can use icons by using the Font Awesome library to import icons. And now we can open any questions. If anybody confused about something so far that we talked about, getting, or you trying to do your code and it's not working for you, I can help you take a look at your code. Okay. No questions is good. It's could be good or bad, but I hope that everything is clear, especially all these properties. We're going to use it tomorrow when we build our project. Ahim, you have a question?
I just want to ask, yeah, your developer course, is it similar like this? You mentioned you have like 3 months. For me,
Oh yeah,
it's a bit faster. I just generally talking like I have zero coding background and it's like 100% new everything for me. I learned so much here, honestly. I wasn't expecting this much. And now just want to know how.
Sure.
So should we have some background for beginning developer course, or is this?
I can tell you that the very first 3 months, we're gonna go over the basics. Notice that we're trying to cover as many because it's only 4-day course. And in order to do a project at the end,
yeah,
we have a little bit speeding up to put it in Mini Bootcamp. But definitely in the course, it's not gonna be slower, but you're gonna have more interaction. So you're gonna have with the TAs before the class where you can practice, because the key here is practicing.
Yeah.
As you practice more, this stuff becomes very easy.
Yeah.
As you have some troubles, as you have some problems, as you have some errors, and you know how to solve them, that's it. Get registered in your mind. It's that whenever you see this problem again, you know what you have to do.
Yeah.
But again, the reason that it might a little bit, you might think it's a little bit fast because we're trying to, in 3 days, technically, we're trying to cover many properties. And again, for you as a developer, we're not expecting you to put everything from your head. You have to do a lot of research. You have some web pages. It's like, for example, you can search how to center and a div in CSS and take you to the exact page where, here you go, and it's gonna tell you how to
use the margin and the border and so on. So you don't have to memorize them. And Visual Studio Code actually provide you, if you do mistake, it will highlight it for you, especially with the CSS here. If I just type in border and I forget the border radius, then I know it's have to do with the border, and it will list all the properties.
Yeah,
Again,
that's right.
no, but yeah, but
Yeah.
it's, I always tell the students, that's your passion, that's what you want to learn about, because if you have that passion, everything will become easy eventually.
Okay.
But yeah, for the main course, definitely we're gonna cover everything in detail. You're gonna learn more about. It's like here we just touch in the flex box. We touch and we didn't cover the HTML forms. We didn't cover many things that you probably need as a developer to know about. But in the full course, definitely we go in depth and cover everything in details. Is that answer your question, or?
Yeah, this was good answer. Thank you. I know, like the speed is kind of this. Yeah, I was thinking like expecting this answer, just wanted to be. So I need more time for practice. Just I know what to expect, so it is good to know.
Sure. And during the full course, that's what you do on a daily basis. You sit with the TAs, they take a look at your code, they answer your questions. So think about it as the community itself, and all your colleagues, they probably gonna have some problems, and they share it in the Slack channel, and you can take a look at it. And if you have a problem, you can share it in the Slack channel. It's the interaction. It's more the community. When you have questions, get answered. But again, we wanted to make this mini boot camp to more practical. We can easily make something like hello world, show a simple text here, and make a website that look from 1990s, but that's not what we're going to interest you for this.
Yeah, it was interesting, a lot of information. It was good. Thank you.
Sure. Well, Jan, tomorrow we're going to build a website to be a portfolio, so you can use it to present your projects, talk a little bit about yourself. You can put the developer image here, and you can scroll down, take a look at his projects. Probably we can add like a small contact form, but it's not going to be working. Of course, you need JavaScript to work, but it's going to be like a full landing page. Think about it as a landing page, a portfolio landing page. Any other questions? Any of you guys, this information was, you're already familiar with it previously? I will do it step by step, but what I'm expecting from you guys, if there's any line of code that you don't understand, you can stop me at any point so we can go over again. Think about it as it's as a review. So we're reviewing everything we learned in the past 3 days. Again, it's all about repetition. We learn about these properties, we have to practice it. So I will do it, not expecting you to work on it, but on the same time, you can open your Visual Studio Code. I can give you like a live link, so you can copy some snippets from my code. You can customize it the way that you want it, to personalize it. For example, if I'm using colors that you prefer to use different colors, feel free to use different colors. If I'm using an images that you want to use a different image, probably you want to put your image, feel free to do it. If you want to change the text that I'm going to put right here in the website, you can use different text. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow. I will share this code on the GitHub repository. You have access to it. Feel free to play around with it. Try to make some changes to the colors, to the text here. Try to take the information that's part of being developer. You try to develop on it. Is This is the graduation project, put together everything we learned or just showing something built. I think, yeah, it's what is just going to be, it's both. It's the last lecture, which is tomorrow. It's going to be the project that we're going to build a project based on HTML and CSS. And it's considered to be the graduation project to believe to get the certificates for the mini bootcamp. Okay. Again, the code will be shared in the GitHub repository. Highly recommend trying to play around with it. Go over it, make some notes. So for example, any of this properties don't make sense to you, just type it down and tomorrow lecture and say, hey, Alfred, I don't know why did you use the, for example, on line item center. Don't make sense. Can you go over it again? I'll be more than happy to go over again. Okay. Try to bring questions to the class. So I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night, everyone.